Sup? Did you know that Driver was supposed to have a TV series? This is probably one of my favorite facts to bring up whenever I get the chance to, because pretty much every single time I get a really surprised reaction from anybody. Because it's something that wasn't really widely known or like widely announced, and unfortunately never led to anything, as we're gonna see throughout the video. But yeah, this is actually something that was announced a couple of years ago from Ubisoft themselves. So this is coming from Ubisoft's own news page. Live action Driver series coming to Binge. This was announced on September 14, 2021, so this was quite a while ago at this point. Driver is shifting gears and coming to your screens in the form of a live action series. The action-adventure driving video game franchise will be brought to life through a collaboration between Ubisoft and Binge, an upcoming streaming platform showcasing original series and shows created for gaming fans. Driver will stream exclusively on Binge.com. So this is already pretty cool, honestly, as a concept. I think if you were to make a Driver series, I think having it be live action is probably the way to go. Now, obviously, if you make a CGI-based TV show, there's a lot more you can do in terms of environments and scenes. But if there's one thing that I always crave, and I feel like is really, really lacking, it's a racing themed or like a driving car themed TV show. We don't really have them because I imagine they're probably really, really expensive and difficult to produce because there's just so much that goes into making like various action scenes and needing to have like an driving action scene every single episode. I can imagine gets very difficult and very complicated very, very fast. But it's just something that doesn't really exist, and it really sucks because I love car-focused movies. Like, my favorite movie, for example, is Baby Driver. And I feel like a Driver TV series could kind of hit a similar note. Which I honestly think would have been so cool to see this come to fruition. It says further, Ubisoft Film and Television's Jason Altman, Danielle Kranick, and Genevieve Jones will serve as the executive producers for the live-action series, alongside producers Alan Ungar and Vincent Talenti for Binge. Now, I looked into a bunch of this at first, because at first I didn't even know what Binge even was, and it looks like at the time of this announcement, Binge didn't even exist yet, so I had a quick look. So it seems like Binge is a streaming platform with a focus on gaming content. Now, I'm not sure what exactly this means because I don't use this service. But I imagine this is kind of like the one place where you can go to watch specific movie adaptations or you know, generally like video game adaptations in the form of movies and TV shows, pretty much. Now, I also had a quick look at the executive producers that they mentioned, because I feel like looking at some of their portfolio can kind of give you an idea what you can sort of expect and how the show might have looked like. So Jason Altman, for example, worked on fairly big TV shows like Orange is the New Black or The Blacklist, Person of Interest, Blue Bloods. I've not actually watched any of these, but I know that these have a lot of fans and they're generally like fairly decent, fairly beloved shows. Now with Danielle Kranick, it's actually fairly interesting because you can see that the Driver TV show is still listed on her IMDb page, as well as the Assassin's Creed TV show, which I think is currently being produced, as well as a Skull and Bones TV series. Who's gonna watch that? Definitely an interesting portfolio. This definitely is a lot more Ubisoft themed. She's produced other stuff here that I'm not super familiar with, which also goes for Genevieve Jones. Most of her backlog is stuff that I've really heard of before, but it also seems like it hasn't really been that well received. So, I don't know. There's also a dedicated IMDb page for the Driver TV, which is considered a mini-series here, actually. So this might mean that this was only going to be one season with maybe like 8 episodes or so, which is a little bit unfortunate, but as I said earlier, I can imagine it's really hard to produce these kinds of shows, and especially with Driver, it's like, I mean, it is one of the more story-focused racing games out there, but like, what kind of story do you want to tell? I feel like especially with Driver San Francisco, they already told pretty much everything that they wanted to tell in terms of story. So yeah, you're not gonna find much info here other than that it is very much like based on the same characters as well. So like John Tanner, the main character, is gonna make an appearance. It's gonna go after some kind of like crime syndicate with a bunch of like car stuff involved. Other than that, you're not really gonna find more info other than this. It does say here that the show was supposed to be produced in the United States. Now what is pretty interesting is we can kind of like fantasize what kind of state and what kind of location they could go for this. I doubt they would have actually filmed this in San Francisco, mainly because Driver San Francisco already exists as a game. And I feel like they probably don't want to just do like a repeat of basically the game pretty much. I could imagine that they would probably bring back a location from one of the previous Driver games. Particularly Driver 2. I think like something like Chicago feels really plausible as a location for a Driver TV miniseries. But obviously we don't know for sure. Could have been anywhere in the United States. But I don't know. You can maybe tell me in the comments what kind of like location you would have liked to see for this show. I think it's like pretty interesting to talk about. And I think it would have been like partially like a main character, so to say, in the series as well. Just the location and the environment in of itself. Our mission at Ubisoft is to bring our games to life in new and exciting ways and create content set in the world, culture and community of gaming. That's Daniel Kranig, Head of Television Development, Ubisoft Film and Television. As longtime fans of the franchise, we're excited to deliver an original, premium and rich storytelling experience that will take fans and newcomers on a thrilling ride, said Alan Ungar for Binge. This actually is a really good sign, because I think one big problem that a lot of TV shows and movies based on video games have is that the people who worked on it, the producers and directors, just didn't care about the source material. I think this is the most obvious with the Witcher TV show, which I feel like kind of with like the third and even the second season has kind of gone downhill because they decided to just completely ignore the lore of the books or even the games, and they just kind of try to do their own thing, which doesn't make any sense considering that it's built on like established lore and stuff. So it's nice to hear that at least some of the people who were working on this seem to at least be longtime fans. Now, obviously, we have to take his word for it. Obviously, he could just be lying. Gotta keep that in mind. But this is usually a good sign. And I think it makes sense too, especially because back in the day, Driver was actually huge. Driver San Francisco, I feel like was more of a niche title. Unfortunately, it's like one of those games from Ubisoft that didn't really sell super well, which is part of the reason why we haven't seen another Driver game since then. But like back in the PlayStation 1 days, Driver 1 and 2 were huge. Those were massive titles, and there were a lot of people looking up to Driver 3 back in the day, which unfortunately ended up disappointing many of them. So it's actually not that far-fetched to imagine that some people who would work on this show actually played some of the games and might have been fans of it. And as I said earlier, it's usually a good sign. You want fans to work on these shows, not like random people who don't really even care about the source material. So this was actually a really good sign. Now there's no actual announcement given here to when they expected to launch the show. They only said that the streaming platform Binge that I mentioned earlier was supposed to launch in 2022, and I think it did as well. But there's no real info here on when they plan to finish up the show and release it. And the unfortunate answer to that is that it would never release. Because this was basically all the news we had for like 4 years. So they just dropped this on as like a news article, and then it was radio silence. We haven't heard anything about this show since this very announcement. Until last year. Ubisoft cancels TV adaptation of cult classic action driving video game. So this was announced on July 15th, 2024 through various different news media. Ubisoft has cancelled their TV adaptation of Driver. And this really sucks. The fact that we didn't get even like a little bit of news, or not even like a teaser, so that we don't even know what this was supposed to be like, just kind of sucks. I mean, maybe in some way it is a blessing in disguise, because I feel like if they had released like a teaser trailer or shown some kind of news, I feel like this might hurt a little bit more, because then you could maybe tell like, oh, this could actually be like really good. Maybe it is a blessing in disguise to know that we don't really know anything about this. But yeah, it was cancelled in 2024, and it really sucks. While the specific reasons for the Driver cancellation were not detailed, there could be numerous factors leading into it. For one, Ubisoft may fear that interest in the video game has dwindled over time, which I can definitely see. Once again, like the last Driver game released in 2011. So even at the time of them announcing the TV show in the first place, it's been 10 years. Like, it's been 10 years without a single piece of, not even like a Driver game, like any kind of Driver media. At which point, like, obviously the interest has kind of dwindled. However, I feel like the entire point behind a TV show like this is to kind of like revitalize and revive a franchise and to really bring eyes back onto a series that hasn't really been seen for a very, very long time. Especially since we know that this was supposed to be a mini-series, I imagine it's cheaper to produce than a whole new Driver game. Although, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that, you know, making TV shows with cars and car action scenes is just generally more expensive than something that's a little bit more toned down. I think, once again, like, the fact that this is a or was supposed to be a mini-series would have made this, like, a smaller budget, a little bit more of a safer project for Ubisoft. So if they want to basically bring back the Driver series and just kind of bring it back on people's radar, I think this was kind of the way to go. This was, like, the entire point, basically, behind the TV show. It's like they don't want to invest that much money into making a new game, which is expensive and takes a while to make, so they just make the miniseries instead. However, and this is where things get even more interesting, additionally, Ubisoft has announced the development of more Driver games, and they might want to focus their attention on those projects rather than a TV adaptation. So this obviously just throws a massive wrench on what I just said. So this is obviously good news. I'm always up for more Driver games, even though modern day Ubisoft is not the same anymore as it was like 10 to 15 years ago. And it is really interesting to me because like the way it seemed to me is that Driver was mainly put on hold or put on ice because of the crew. This is something we see all the time, is that publishers don't really see the need to have two racing games going on at the same time, even though they fill completely different roles and fulfill completely different niches. Sony has done this as well, for example, with Drive Club and Gran Turismo Sport. So basically, Drive Club was like their first big racing game for the PlayStation 4. And then as soon as Gran Turismo Sport came out, all work on Drive Club updates, DLCs, and perhaps even sequels was just completely stamped. They feel like just having one racing game is enough. Once again, none of these publishers understand that it's more than fine to have two racing games going on at the same time, as long as they fulfill completely different roles. And I feel like, especially in the case of Driver and The Crew, you have, well, let's take The Crew, for example, which is a very, very arcadey live service type game, whereas Driver, I feel like, to me, has always been more on the simcade side, not entirely sim, but it's, like, to me, just never really felt like an arcade racer that is more single-player focused with a story, which is just kind of like a, you know, replayable experience, so to say. So, like, to me at least, like, these two games couldn't be any more different from each other. But once again, this is Ubisoft, and the higher-ups, the executives that make these decisions, they don't really see the differences. They just see, like, two car games, two driving games, and they just think, like, okay, we just need one of these. Which makes it really interesting that they are now apparently working on another Driver game. And this might be, like, a story for another video, because, I mean, Lord knows how that could turn out. But yeah, we haven't heard anything about that since then either. In fact, this is actually the first time I'm hearing about this news, that a new Driver game is in development. I didn't even know about that. Yeah, who knows how that's gonna turn out. But bringing it back to the Driver TV series, I will still say that I'm kind of bummed out about this. And I feel like they really missed out on something huge, because at the moment, TV adaptations of video games are massive, and usually they do pretty well as well, especially if they're well made. So you have, for example, the Fallout TV show, you have the Last of Us TV show, you have, I want to say also The Witcher, because it was successful, but I feel like for every successful TV show, there's also one that is not super successful. Like, I think the Halo TV show is a really good example for that, which basically just got canned after one season because everybody hated it. The point is, though, that video game adaptations at the moment are extremely popular. And so it just feels kind of weird when they have one in the works and probably already spent a lot of time and money into one, to just cancel it right now where it is really, really booming. I don't know. I feel like there might be a chance that they still bring this back in some capacity. Maybe this is copium on my side. But maybe they do see, like, hey, you know, like, TV adaptations are really, or like video game adaptations into like the various different forms of media are really popular at the moment. So maybe they changed their mind and kind of like reboot development on the Driver TV series. It's hard to say, but I feel like we really did miss out on something cool, because as I said in the beginning of the video, we just don't have car-themed TV shows. It's just something we don't really have. Maybe there's something out there that I'm missing. The only thing that I can come up with is like the German TV series Alarm für Cobra 11. And that sucks. That one just sucks. I'm sorry. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, it feels like there's such a big niche you could fill here, especially because car-themed movies tend to do pretty well if they're done right. Like, you have the F1 movie, which recently came out and seemingly does well. You had the Gran Turismo movie, which did well. And even before that, you had movies like Ford vs. Ferrari, which are just universally beloved. And so I feel like this is just like one massive like niche in the market you could really cash out on. Like, you have both a video game adaptation and a car-themed TV series at the same time. It's like the 1-2 punch. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Ubisoft definitely missed out on something huge here. Regardless, though, whether it is a TV series or a game or something else entirely, I would just love to see more Driver, man. Like, I feel like it's one of the most unfairly forgotten racing game franchises of all time, considering that it used to be one of the absolute, like, most popular, one of the absolute best of the best racing game franchises back in the PlayStation 1 days. And it's now just completely lost all of its popularity over the years. And now it's been, like, almost 15 years without a single piece of Driver media. So if this is true, if they are working on another Driver game, I'm gonna be cautiously optimistic. As I said earlier, this is modern Ubisoft we're talking about. But at this point, I just take anything I get. Just give me more Driver, man. Just give me more Driver, please. Please, Ubisoft. But what do you think? How do you think this TV miniseries of the Driver show would have panned out? I'd really like to hear some of your thoughts on this, because once again, it feels like something that not a lot of people are aware of and know about, that this was supposed to be a thing. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And with that, I'll hopefully catch you next time. Take care, take it easy, and as always, peace. See you guys.